Hello, Bobcat Nation. Welcome to the very first guest episode of the Region 20 Bobcast. We thought it would be a good idea to kick off the Bobcast with an introduction to the leader of our pack, Dr. Jeffrey Villar. He is our Region 20. The Region 20 School Board recently conducted an intensive search for the right person to be at the helm of our district. We all know that we've gone through a little bit of turmoil lately. And during the interview process, it was clear from the get-go that Dr. Villar would be the front runner for the superintendent position. Not only were we looking for somebody with experience in dealing with complicated budget issues, as Jeffrey has, we wanted someone who was going to be invested in our community. Dr. Villar is in the process of moving his family to the Northwest Hills, and one of his very own kids is going to be a student in Region 20 in the fall. In the few weeks that he's been leading our school district, he is shown to be an honest and no-nonsense communicator. And not only does he bring a wealth of experience and commitment, he brings a sense of calm. I can say that on behalf of the Board of Education, which we are so very grateful for. Dr. Jeffrey Villar, welcome to Region 20 and to the Bobcast.
Thank you.
We are very excited to have you, and in all the ways. Here, sitting here, and out there for our students and our staff and our community. I know that when we hired you, we went through the interview process. It was long and daunting, but we had a lot of really great conversations with you. And, you know, I remember the last interview we had, you walked out the door and we all looked at each other and we were like, why did we let him go? Why didn't we just offer him the job right here? And then Tiffany made the phone call, like you were driving home. We were very excited to have you. We are very excited to have you. It has been a pleasure to work with you these last few weeks. Have you been here weeks or months? I don't even know.
Almost a month, I think.
Okay. It feels like a long time, but yeah. But I know that, you know, we have a lot of business stuff to talk about because the community wants to know what's going on. There's signs out there on the roads that we have to kind of talk about, I guess. But I also wanted the community to get to know you as a person. Like, we hired you not just because of your expertise and your experience. We hired you because you give us a really good warm and fuzzy, quite honest. And I think it's important for the people out there to get to know the person who you are and what made you, you know, the dad you are, the family guy you are, the community member you are, and what made you get into wanting to be in education, right?
Sure.
So tell us your story.
My story. Well, my father was a Cuban immigrant. My mother actually was a high school dropout. They got married very young and had 3 kids before my mom was 23. And so I was raised in a household that initially was struggling a little bit as kids. And then as we got older, my father was self-employed and, you know, things went better for us for sure, but definitely learned to live in lean times as a kid.
Yeah.
My mom went back to school when I was about 10 and ultimately got herself licensed as a teacher, worked as a teacher for quite some time, became a principal, retired after 25 years. She was actually a principal in Harrington.
Yes.
Talk about small world.
Yes. I know one of our principals knows her.
That's correct. So my mother's influence definitely pushed me into education. When I was in high school, I went to East Catholic High School in Manchester, Connecticut. As a freshman, I began teaching CCD classes.
Yep.
And working with kids, and became clear to me that's what I wanted to do. So I made sure I went to a college that would prepare me to be a Connecticut teacher. So I went to Eastern Connecticut State University, became a history teacher. I worked in Lebanon and Chaplin, Connecticut, which is very rural.
Yeah.
And then ended up moving to Hartford, Connecticut, and worked there. And spent quite a bit of time there, moving then to Meriden. Spent almost a decade in Meriden, where I went from being an assistant principal to the associate superintendent over time. So I got several different posts in that district. Wanted to be a superintendent, went to Rocky Hill, Connecticut, superintendent there. Then I went to Windsor, Connecticut, took another job at the Connecticut Council for Education Reform to really drive that, and then went up to Massachusetts, and now I'm here. But I think my family's influence is it's clearly why I am who I am.
Sure.
My father, his family, super hard workers. They saw America as opportunity.
Yep.
A lot of obstacles for them, but they just worked.
Yeah.
Like, they taught me you show up, you work, and good things will happen.
Yeah.
If you're there, you work hard, good things will happen. And my mom, high expectations.
Yeah.
No excuses. she was in school. She was taking care of 3 kids. Our house was spotless. Everything was planned.
Food on the table.
Everything was always, get it done right. And so when they praised us, it was because we did something right. And they would be honest with us when we weren't doing so well.
Yeah.
I think that's what led to my brother, my sister, and I being successful adults.
Sure.
So I tried to do the same with my kids.
Yeah.
And I have a bunch.
There's a bunch.
For sure. We're a Brady bunch. So my wife, Kelly, she and I have been together about 16 years. She had 2 kids. I had 3 kids. And between the 2 of us, we have Alexander, who will be at the high school next year.
We're excited.
He's our baby. He's the only one eligible to be in Region 20. The rest are all grown, for sure. But we bring all of that to every decision I make as a superintendent.
Yeah. I think that's, and I think for a lot of people, right, when you're in a career in education, your first priority is always your students and your staff and, wanting to make sure that they have all the things that they need, right? And we do it, it's your profession, but you're a parent. And so you know what you want for your own kids. And so, when we make decisions, like I'm not an educator at all, but I've been super active in all the schools that my kids have been in New York City, here. Now I sit on the school board. But for me, it's always been, I want to be in the know. Like, I want to know what's going on. I want to know who the teachers are. I want to be friends with the teachers. I want to know who the superintendent is. I think it's important and I understand that not every parent has that opportunity or that privilege. And that I think is a privilege for me. But there are ways for us to get to know our people and to get to know our teachers and to get to know our superintendent and our leaders. And this is one way that we're doing it. But encouraging our community to get involved, I think it's a great thing too, right?
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
No, I think community involvement in schools is essential. Right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the backbone of how American schools were formed. They're community-based. That's why we have boards of education. The local decisions are supposed to be driven by community values. So each school is going to look a little different based on what the community wants.
Sure.
And I've experienced that in the different places I've been a leader, for sure.
Yeah.
Which I think helps you get a better idea of how to manage districts, because you can see it can be done differently, well, in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
So the more you involve families, the more you involve local leaders, the more likely you are to have some synergy, right, and get things moving in the right direction. So I think you got to be communicative, and so it's and transparent.
Yeah.
Sharing people, like, this is the decision. This is why I'm making the decision. This is my rationale behind it, and own it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this is what it is. Now, be open to feedback and open to different opinions about what could be done. And now, on anything serious and significant, you got to spend some time listening.
Yeah.
And that's the other really important word is listen, not so much talk.
Yes.
I recently wrote an email to a citizen who was asking questions, and I pointed out in an email, just because I communicated something, I thought I sent a message out, doesn't mean that it was received.
Correct.
Right. And so if the people didn't understand what I sent out, then I failed to communicate, even though I thought I tried.
Sure.
Right? So it's important to gauge and listen to what people are saying, because then you can determine whether or not you actually have communicated.
Right.
Sitting face to face with people. I exchange emails with folks, going out to meet with groups of people, attending events. Like last night I was at the FFA Awards.
That is my favorite, one of my favorite nights of the year.
It's a pretty cool award.
It's spectacular. Have you ever done an FFA Awards like that?
Yeah, my daughter was an FFA.
Oh, good. I always go to them. I don't have a kid in FFA, but my kids are in school here. And I love that night. I love it.
It's a great club, great organization. Yep. It teaches kids a lot. It changed my daughter's life. Yeah,
for sure.
She's now in the field as a professional.
That's amazing.
Yep. And so FFA is great. And again, being there, listening, seeing, experiencing, that's how you learn about the values of a community.
Right.
So it's time well spent.
Right. Well, let's get into the big picture, right? It's no secret that we've had a little bit of turmoil, I guess.
Yeah.
Not sure what the best word to call all of the things that we've been through in the last year. We're facing a budget shortfall. We've been working on the budget. We recently did not pass our second iteration of the budget. I know we're working on another round. We have a meeting about that next week. How have you, when you walked in here, I want you to tell the community, the people that don't know, right? We're reaching everybody, but we want to reach people that don't necessarily know about what's going on here. How have you approached the challenge of balancing our fiscal responsibility with the need to maintain strong academic and extracurricular offerings in our schools.
Yeah. Admittedly, I'm coming in tail end.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And the budget process is really, it's difficult when you come in at tail end because it's important to understand impact of any decision you make, right? Long range, long term, downstream impact. And so normally when you're really deeply entrenched into a district, it's easier to make these decisions, right? Because I would have been in classrooms longer. I would know who I'm talking about. I would see the systems operating. So I come in and I'm looking at the lay of the land, trying to figure out the relationships between all these different positions. And I keep saying positions because ultimately the scale of our budget issue is really only solved by positions, right? Because it's about 80% of our expenditures. Yes, we can nibble around the cookie on all the other stuff, but at the end of the day, to get the big reductions, it's staffing. Yeah, and that's always difficult.
Yep.
So coming in, I've really had to rely on the principals, rely on quick observation, and this is my fourth superintendency.
Yeah.
So I do have a general understanding of how things are interrelated, although a little different each district, mostly similar.
Okay.
Right? So you do begin to have a feel for, well, if this goes away, I know the impact is going to be
behind it. Yeah.
So, that I rely on quite a bit. And then it's back and forth with principals. Hey, look, I need reductions. What's the impact if I do this?
Yeah.
And we talk through that impact and understand because there's no reduction that goes without impact.
Yeah.
Everybody's doing something. They're adding value in one way or another. And so when we take that person away, we're taking away some source of value to our system.
Yep.
And it's determining how do you fill the gap after, if it's possible.
Yeah.
And so I've tried to set some assumptions that, one, I want to build a system that's quality. So how do you get to as lean as you can be, but maintain quality?
Yeah.
And every decision kind of gets balanced against that. So what do we lose in quality if we take this away?
Right.
And then try to transparently communicate that to the community, trying to build some trust around the budget. In reflection, certainly next year's process will be different.
Yeah.
I've been talking with our CFO about it and how are we going to lay this out so that the community has a much better understanding of our budget well before we get to this point of time. Right. Because I think we're behind that 8 ball.
Yeah.
Trying to get out of the whole communicating. And there's already a lot of mistrust.
Yeah.
So, end of the day, a lot of interconnected points. But I think we're at the point where we have squeezed this thing so tight.
For sure.
I keep telling people, I do not see any other positions I can take away without violating the, quality school rule, right? If we decide we don't care about quality, I can give you 15 cuts.
Right.
That's easy. Right. The hard part is quality and reductions.
Yeah. Well, none of us wants that. Right. So there's that. We're going to go back to that in a minute. So our district has a unique Ag Sci program, right? We talked about FFA just a second ago, and that is a big point of pride for a lot of members of our community, which rightfully so. How do we plan on protecting and growing that program, especially when we have limited resources?
Yeah. I think one thing about the program that I need to think about how to better communicate is the value add that it has to our high school.
Sure.
I've heard voices argue that, well, the expenditures, or I should say the revenue from the state for each student is not equal to our expenditures. So therefore, it's costing us money.
Right. I hear the same thing.
And so I would ask people to think about it differently. And the way the funding model was designed is think about if you have an English teacher with 15 kids, you have a math teacher with 15 or 20 kids even, we could say, science teacher, et cetera, and then you add 5 kids in. Now you still have the same teacher.
Yeah.
But those 5 kids coming in have $14,000 attached to them.
Right.
Right. So that's the design of the model. We would have teachers anyway.
Yeah.
Now we're bringing more kids in. We're actually just more efficiently using the teaching resource, filling the classrooms, and you're getting additional revenue that helps support that additional programming.
Right.
So there's a balance to it, but it's absolutely not a drag on the system.
Sure. All right.
And in fact, it's probably a bonus to the system.
Yeah.
And so that communication needs to happen. We have to figure out a way to articulate that so that the whole community understands that this program is a benefit, not a drag.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then from a perspective of students, I know firsthand it changed my daughter's life.
Yeah.
Absolutely kept her interested in high school and then led to her profession.
Yeah.
I think the opportunity for kids in that type of program, because it's so varied where you can go.
100%.
Like there's so many careers associated with it. And it's really deeply tied to how human beings learn.
Yep.
Right. So there's no doubt science will tell you that people learn best by doing.
Correct.
And best by doing with the assistance of a more capable other.
Yeah.
Right. So you start with someone showing you how to do it. They guide you through the process. Then gradually they release and you take it on yourself. And that is exactly what happens in BOAG all day long.
Yep.
And you get kids doing very complicated tasks independently very quickly.
Yeah.
Right. And they develop an expertise at a very young age. It's awesome education.
Yeah.
So expanding on that only would help our students. So I think it's unfortunately been so buried in on the budget.
I know.
But we definitely have to get to a space where we're talking about expanding, growing, and enhancing programming because it's no mystery why we have good outcomes in this district.
Yeah.
Right? Some of the programming is going to lead to that.
Sure. So in times of financial strain, we talked about transparency just a second ago, kind of touched on it. How do we keep, most importantly, our staff, our families, and our community informed and engaged, right? We talked about listening. We talked about communicating. How do we want to make them, I guess, maybe more engaged?
Yeah, well, earlier today, talking about attending PTO meetings and Q&A with parents. I've had Q&A with the teachers groups at the high school. Going out, interacting with people, absolutely the gold standard, right? The more you can have face-to-face conversations with people, the better off we all are.
Yeah.
We begin to make much better contact. Trying to put out written documents that are clear, trying to make our website clearer. We recently added just a simple pop-up box that then links you to all the important files related to the budget. You don't have to go dig in this sea of documents, right? Trying to clarify communications and simplify for people. I think all of that will help.
Yeah.
But I go back to rethinking the process in future years, breaking it down, being very clear and transparent from the get-go, I think would be even better.
Yeah.
We're just behind that 8 ball.
Sure. We're not going to be for long.
Nope.
Right. So let's get creative, right? Funding challenges spark some creativity, right? We have to get creative with how we're doing things and what we're moving and what we're doing. Are there any innovative partnerships or alternative funding sources do you think that we can explore to support programs and operations?
Yeah. I always say first and foremost, crises are opportunities.
Yep.
Right. So anytime an employee leaves, funding disappears, you have to cut, you have to change your organization. It is an opportunity for reflection, an opportunity to think about a different way of doing things. That examination, are we getting what we thought we were getting out of this program anyway? Yeah. And I do think, I would say that in education, that's not always the way people think about things. Right. So I think it's critical we do that. And I have used that kind of logic in the past to, I would argue, really good results. So here, I think that, working with ed foundations, right, talking to people about making sure we have nonprofits associated with our schools that then can raise funds, use those funds to augment programming support. And you have SWAGs, right, for
ag.
FFA. Yep. That's a great example. Generally there's like band parent groups, ed foundations, et cetera.
The Booster Club. We've got the Booster Club.
Exactly. So those groups, interacting with them, one, they can become good messengers for the district. Sure. They can get good positive information out to people. They can raise funds and they can support things that often are difficult for us to do with public resources. Yeah. So all of that can help. Then there are other grants, like we're looking at a security grant from the federal government. There are state grants. Bigger challenge is we are not a low-income district. A lot of money is funneled to low-income districts. Yeah. That's just the nature of the beast. But with enough gumption, you can go out there. There are opportunities to find funding. This is another point where I say to folks, you don't want to cut your staff so lean you don't have capacity to do things like that. Right. Because if you're just trying to keep the books all day, right, now you can't think about other smarter opportunities. So there's a balance there too. But we got to get out of the box a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not all just public dollars. Like we gotta we gotta look at companies. We gotta look at synergies. And I think it's worked. My 5 years in the nonprofit world.
Yeah.
It was all about fundraising.
Yep.
And going out and speaking to people about their priorities. How do they align with our priorities? What projects are we trying to do? What do you want to support?
Yeah.
And then the synergy, off you go.
Make that happen.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to kind of backtrack a little bit. I'm a life coach, and what I do is listen, right? And I think when you said to me, listening is really important, I was like, oh my God, yes. And I think a lot of people don't take the time to sit and digest and really listen. And I think in our situation with, the volatility around the budget, people just want to believe what they want to believe, and they don't really want to listen. And there's a lot of miscommunication out there, or misinformation out there. The big signs that went up last week about $3.4 million in deficit, right? It's not that number, like that number is inaccurate, right? So trying to get the community to listen and provide them with information, like you said, is important, to disseminate that information. And I know that we're not going to change some people's minds, right? Those people are always going to be in that corner, and that's fine. But how do we potentially correct that narrative, or maybe change the course of that narrative? Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think about it, I literally lose sleep over it. So for me, it's like, change the messaging, reach out to people. Like you said, we're going to try and have PTO meetings. I just think that there's a lot of noise out there, and I don't know what the solution is. And I don't know if we're brainstorming this right now or whatever, but I think it's important for the community to know that there's a lot of stuff out there that's just not true. And coming to us directly is probably a smart thing to do.
Yeah, for sure. I think when I reflect on what I'm seeing and hearing in the community, part of the issue is the complexity of a school budgeting process.
Sure.
And the complexity of the policy environment, the rules and regulations that schools have to follow.
Right.
They don't always make a lot of sense to lay people, right?
Yeah.
So, and it causes misunderstandings. And often there's nuanced differences in how you can spend money and rules that you have to follow. And there's no space in Facebook world for nuance.
Right.
Right. It's black and white.
Yeah.
You're my friend or you're not my friend, right? This is how our country is at the moment.
Right.
It's like this or this.
Yes.
And so I think human beings have a tendency for what they call confirmation bias, right? So you look for information that supports what you believe, and you're quick to embrace it and you move along. So when we have a complicated scenario like what Region 20 finds itself in, right, where you've got legacy problems, I'll call them, from two previous school districts, right? Region 6, Litchfield, those school districts closed down. There are issues related to their last year's budgets and deficits and expenditures and invoices. Confusing, right? Like, it took me several weeks to figure out what the heck was going on.
Yeah. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
I've been doing this for like 30 years. And so it takes that long. So if I'm at home and I'm an architect and I'm working with my family, I don't have time to figure that all out.
Yeah.
So I'm probably going to go with my confirmation bias subconsciously.
Yeah,
and just what clicks and then goes with what my experience is, I believe that. And off we go. And this happens with people all the time.
All the time.
So trying to break down these complicated problems so that people can grasp in a sentence or two, this problem is this.
Right.
And there's the solution. We're moving on. You had our deficit. Yeah. And for people, it's mind-blowing because common sense now, we're in June. Yeah. We look back to last July. Well, why didn't they do A, B, or C? They knew there was a deficit. Well, the problem is, what did people know at the time? Right. Is different than what we know now.
100%.
As that unfolds, it is a very different experience as people are trying to solve a problem that they don't know what the problem is yet, right? It's unfolding.
Yeah.
And this happens often after crises when you go back and you do a deconstruction of the response. Sure. Experts do this all the time, and you can start to see how things unfolded, but you have to remember people knew what they knew.
Right.
So I think we find ourselves in this really complicated mess because there are several problems all conflated, all around finance.
Yep.
Finance, if you want to get people bees in a bonnet, mess up finance.
Right.
That's pretty serious stuff. And now we're trying to untangle it.
Yeah.
While we're also breaking the news to the public that schools cost more every year.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, again, the ed plan, it's not going to cost you more. Well, I'm sorry, every household in America this year is paying more for everything than they were last year. And it's been that way my whole life.
Yeah, mine too.
I don't think it's ever gone backwards.
Right.
It's always more. And so, unfortunately, no matter what we do as financial stewards, schools will cost more next year than they did this year. Now, can we make good, smart plans and make them a little less more? Of course. Like, that's our job to figure that out. But so I think the misinformation that's out there, some of it's willful, like people just don't want to spend. Yeah. So we're going to find a way to make sure people don't approve increases.
Right.
That's a natural. I think that's everywhere. Yeah. It's a percentage of our population. Then there's a percentage of people who don't know what's going on. I raise my hand in my own community. I'm an educator. I didn't go to every town meeting. Sure. Right. I wasn't engaged in every budget. Like, that's a pretty normal scenario. People are really busy. When you get outcry, that's usually because you've shaken things up. Yeah. And now you got something people are paying attention to. And that's where we are right now. So how do we educate those folks about what we're doing about the issue, what the issue is, without nuance, because that no one has time for it. Yep. A lot of communication, trying to break it down into its basic components. Yeah. There's a trust element. Yeah. I think people tend to trust their leaders. Again, like using myself as an example, if I didn't go to my town meeting, it's me saying I'm trusting the decision making. Sure. Right? Yep. If I am upset, suddenly I no longer trust, I'm engaged. That's what happens. Yeah. Right. So here, there's zero trust at this point. Right. Right. And rightfully so. Like, there's been just this cascading effect of bad news. Yep. And people are exhausted. Yep. So I get it. And now it's, how do you claw that back? Yep. Well, transparency. Showing people, like, this is what we got. Trying to explain it over and over and over. And not getting frustrated with that because it's not the people's fault. Right. 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 So how do we keep trying at it? So I think at the end of the day, this is going to be a slog. Right? Yeah. It's a slow crawl out. That's why I said earlier, I think next year's budget process, having been here for a period of time, I'll be able to hopefully make it a lot more transparent. Yep. A lot clearer for folks so that when we get to time to vote, people don't have a lot of outstanding questions. Yeah. But yeah, it's going to take some time. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. Not an easy thing to do. And you go back to the trust thing, right? Like, as a Board of Education member, our trust was breached too. Yes. Right. And I think a lot of people in the community aren't even taking that into consideration. Like, we have been under fire since this happened, right? Yep. And there are, like you said, other outside elements that we didn't even know about as the Region 20 Board of Education, right? We didn't know what was happening over here and over here and over there. And so our trust was breached probably the most out of anybody's. I mean, the community feels like they've been, and rightfully so for sure, but to come into this as working members of trying to do the right thing and knowing or thinking that you were on a path to do all the right things and having resources that you were told that you had, and then all of a sudden, we never had them to begin with, and none of us knew that. And that, I think, for me, has been the hardest thing to wrap my own head around as somebody who has been on the inside since literally, I'm an original board member. There's not very many of us left. And people are still calling for us to not be here. And I've dug in, I've committed. I could have walked away and been like, this is ridiculous. Like, I don't need this, right? I don't need this for my family. I don't need this. And people have done that. And I do not criticize them at all for that, because you have to do what's right for you 100% of the time. But I think the understanding from the community also has to be there too, right? We need a little bit of grace on both sides. We need a little bit of understanding. We need some compassion from the people out there who don't know, and they just keep, pounding us. And I, like you said, rightfully so. There's stuff that we're still uncovering, or maybe not. We've uncovered most of it, I assume. But the stuff that we knew that we didn't know,
has been hard for all of us, right? I mean, I can tell you, sleepless nights, lots of tears. You feel betrayed. And when you're somebody who's supposed to be making this happen, and then you get, the wind knocked out of you, it's a really hard place to be. So we appreciate having somebody in here who is, writing the sails on the ship. And we appreciate that you're being honest with us, because that wasn't happening in the past.
Yeah, I would say that, in my experience, boards of education and generally boards have to depend on their executive.
Yep.
The executive has access to all the information and then has to make that information accessible to the board.
Yeah.
Right? And, in public education, board members are, come with different professions, different backgrounds, different beliefs, and different expertise. And so it's unfair to think they're going to understand all the nuances of education out of the gate. So that's part of the job for me as superintendent. In a way, you're managing up and you're managing down.
Yeah.
So it's getting the information up to the board, helping the board understand their avenues, what they can do with that information, what policies they can set, what rules they have to follow, and doing that is part of my job.
Yeah.
And so if I'm not sharing critical information with you and I'm making decisions on my own, one, that's professionally dangerous for me.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's going to be hard for you to figure that out for quite some time.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I will say I really appreciate the fact that what I see in this board is it's really engaged with the community. So board members are constantly bringing me information about the community.
Yep.
And that's super helpful, right?
Yeah.
I'm new. I don't know people. I don't know the culture and the history. And it's a great check, right? So you see, I put into play different rules, policies in the schools, impacts students, families, teachers, their community members, comes back to me through board members. This is what we're hearing.
Yeah.
It's a great way for me to triangulate a little bit and understand the impact of any policy or decision, right? So that's one of the balances that's really important with the board.
Yeah.
And honestly, I've learned that over time. When you first become an executive, sometimes it's about power.
Yeah.
And you don't understand that it's really not about the power.
Right. That's the last thing.
Yes. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of that. But at the end of the day, the board is going to make decisions, but only with the information that they can get. And so what you can't get, if it's only available in the district, it's only available in our documentation or our schools, it's not publicly available. It's pretty hard for you to make decisions if I don't set the stage.
Right.
So clearly that's part of my job.
Yep.
To figure out what do you need to know, and then to ask you to weigh in on policies, to weigh in on contracts, to weigh in directionality of where we're going as a district.
Yeah.
Super important.
Yeah. We are very happy that we're shifting in that direction. Okay. We've talked enough about all the stuff. We both know that there's a lot of good stuff happening in Region 20. We have had a particularly good inaugural year, even with all the stuff, right? We have athletic teams that are state champions in their first year out, right? We have a theater program that I don't know what happened to the award, 18 award nominations or whatever. I don't know how many they won or if they won any of them, but let's talk about the good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just last night at the FFA Awards, there was 600 people there.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Right. I was like amazed that the blue coat sea that you see.
Yes. We opened the balcony at Lakeview. Right? Yeah.
And so that's an example. I go back also, the week before we're at the high school seniors awards and all the awards that kids are getting. And what I raised during that evening is sitting on the stage, I was watching the kids, our seniors mostly, some of them underclassmen, but sitting together and high-fiving and cheering each other as they're coming back after they got an award. You could just see that this group of kids is tight.
Yeah.
And, the word that I heard in the community is, we mashed together these two high schools, the wailing, gnashing of teeth. Kids often lead us.
Yes.
Right? And
yes.
The students have led towards unity, right? They have figured it out. They're meshed.
Yeah.
And you could see it.
Yeah.
Like, it was legit. So that's for me, a super moment of pride.
Yeah.
Wow. Kids overcome.
Yeah. We have great kids. Great kids.
Very much so. And it's really exciting to see that. You go to the elementary schools, we got tons of happy kids and happy teachers, which for me is a great way of measuring quality of school. Right?
Yeah.
Just simple.
Yeah.
You walk in, are the teachers happy? Are the kids having a good time? If they are, we're probably headed in the right direction. It's a good start. Right? And believe me, I've seen it where it's not always the case.
Right.
So that's something that I think sometimes is lost on people.
Yeah.
Despite all the acrimony on the outside, we have teachers coming every day. We have kids coming every day, and they're all working hard at learning and having a good time while they're learning.
Yep.
That's admirable, right?
Yeah.
Like, because I can see where a teacher might hear all this noise and have to carry the weight of, am I going to be cut? Am I going to not have a job?
Yep.
Am I appreciated for the work I'm doing, or am I going to be let go? That's hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they're putting that aside and they're coming to work and they're supporting our kids.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a really, really cool thing to see how professional our teachers have been in this whole thing.
Yeah.
The paw print over
here, we're at Plum Hill right now. Yeah.
right, and donated by community.
Yep.
And pretty amazing, right? And it's just be kind. Talk about an awesome symbol, like super simple, but right on point. If you're kind, good things are going to happen, right? So I think that's something to embrace. I got to tell you, I literally said this to my wife. I've not received so many emails of appreciation as a superintendent that I have in this community.
That's so nice.
Been here in a month.
Yes.
So that's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
So people are taking the time to recognize our employees, to recognize even my efforts.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Be kind, right?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. They're leading.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot to embrace.
Yeah.
And we're just getting started.
Yeah.
Like, that's the cool part.
Right.
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 Just with all the drag of this year,
Yeah.
great things have still happened. And imagine if we get some synergy, some focus, and some direction. I think it's going to be the best regional district in the state.
Me too. So on that, what is your long-term vision for the district, and obviously, how does that support our academics, our extracurriculars, and our ag program, right? We have to kind of keep a well-rounded group. But what are we looking at, like our big vision? I mean, I feel like sky's the limit in anything you do, right? And so, what are we looking at?
Well, I go back to your roots, and with my family, it's like you go hard, you do something, you do it as hard as you can, and you try to be successful. And if you're not, you get back up and you go back at it, right? You just keep going back at it. You just got to keep trying. So I think this district has to aim and will be the best regional district in Connecticut. So how are we going to get there, right? Well, we have massive resources in the sense. Yeah. This ag program is already great.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And we've got a grant attached to it. We're going to make it greater, right? We're going to figure out a way to utilize those funds to improve the program. So that's awesome. If you look at academics, both Region 6 and Litchfield's historical academics are excellent, right? So that's a great foundation. That's actually the most difficult work of school reform or school improvement, right? Is how do you change academic outcomes? Well, we're on a solid foundation, right? So we're going to go up. I think there's opportunity to improve our elementary instruction, to provide more intervention, and we have to figure out the resources to do all that. Yeah. But 100%, that's going to only get better. We're going to work and see strong outcomes. At the high school level, SATs and college admissions are already pretty darn good. Yeah. Can we push that? Absolutely, right? Comes down to empowering teachers, working with teachers to make sure they're part of the decision-making on curriculum instruction and assessment. They're closest to our kids. Yep. They understand what they need. And often we don't listen enough to them. Yeah. Right. So I've already had these preliminary conversations about how are we going to change that process in this district, get more teacher voice, because we'll get better outcomes. And that'll be tied to student satisfaction too, because if their teacher's happy, their class is happy. Yeah. I mean, it's some of it's pretty simple. Improving efficiencies and systems. We've started that work. I think the CFO is phenomenal. Yeah. She's you need to surround her with people who work super hard, no doubt. But also look at technology systems and efficiencies and like how can we improve experience for all of our, I guess, users, right? Our students, our families, and our staff. And how do we use technology to leverage better outcomes there? And there's tons of examples. like just online paying for things.
Yeah. Right.
You know,
Can we have a Venmo for the school, please?
essentially,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like some way, it's 2025. Like I have to write a check.
Yes.
Are you crazy? Like I
don't even know where mine are.
I have adult children who don't know what's a check.
No.
So the world has changed fast. But I think we can look at those things. It'll improve our bottom line.
Yep.
It improves our efficiency, give us better data, which is also something that we really have to work on here. Is academic data, social data. Like I want to get a survey out. I want to survey student, staffs, and families at least once a year, if not twice a year.
Yeah.
And then we can publicly track that data and react to that data so that we can continue to grow, right? I'm proposing to the board that be part of my goals.
Yeah.
To work on climate. Academically, same thing. We should have data systems, and we should be able to show people visualizations of where we are, where our strengths are, where our weaknesses are, and what we're doing about it.
Yep.
And once we have those systems, it changes the nature of conversation around teaching and learning, because now it's driven by fact, not just gut, and you get really good outcomes.
Yeah.
So to me, all that's exciting. Now the issue, we got to get enough funding so we can do that stuff, right?
Right.
Because right now, it's definitely pretty thin.
Yeah.
It's definitely pretty thin.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Okay. You're not actually off the hook yet, because before I let you go, we like to do one fun, quick segment, and it's called What's for Lunch? So Jeffrey Villar, what was your favorite lunch as a student in school? Any part of your schooling?
So it definitely would be this really horrific pizza that was made at East Catholic High School.
The worst pizza was the best lunch.
Well, my cardiologist would say otherwise, but there's few pizza I don't eat.
I gotcha.
But for sure, I remember that pizza. And I used to eat a lot of it.
Excellent. Dr. Villar loves his pizza, everybody.
And now it's without cheese because
oh, okay.
fat.
Okay. Cholesterol.
Gotta stay nice and healthy.
Got it. That's a grandma pizza. My husband eats them. Mm-hmm. They're good though. You put onions on it and garlic.
Yeah, definitely. As we get older, you got problems with everything, right?
Well,
so you got to balance it all out.
Yeah.
More veggies nowadays.
Yeah. Veggie pizza's good. Jeffrey, thank you so much for doing this. This is so great. We appreciate your time. We hope the community appreciates your time and your thoughtful responses and conversation that we've had today. I think it's been really great. And I hope that you come back. We're going to keep this going. We have a lot of really great episodes coming out as well. So make sure that you like and share and follow us on all of our Instagram, TikTok, YouTube places at Region 20 BobCast. That's a wrap for our first episode. Thank you, Bobcat community. We appreciate you, and keep learning, keep questioning, and stay curious. Till next time.
Awesome.
Thanks.